All aboard. Yes, good day, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. We've got a few things to talk about today. Let me just reel off the stuff that's on the agenda. So we're going to be talking about the fact that it seems as though Zhang has pulled out of the purse bid for the Martin Bakole fight, or the date of the purse bid came and went, and there were no bids. So again, presumably Zhang pulled out. We're going to be talking about Derek Chisora's next fight, which has now been announced. It won't be Jarrell Miller. We'll come on to that. Or it isn't Jarrell Miller, it's confirmed now. We'll also be talking about this Riyadh season card, which is set for February 22nd, and the rumored fights that are going to be on it. So none of this is confirmed right now. It's just rumors. But there's the likes of Daniel Dubois versus Joseph Parker, apparently topping the bill. Artur Beterbiev, Dmitry Bivol 2. Some people find that hard to believe, given their first fight was only last month in October. Me personally, I think it's very plausible that that fight would happen on February 22nd in Saudi Arabia. There's also rumored to be the Boots Ennis Virgil Ortiz fight happening on that card, as well as Shakur Stevenson versus Floyd Schofield, Carlos Adames versus Hamza Shiraz, and a heavyweight fight, which we'll come on to later, okay? So if that lineup turns out to be correct, then of course this will be probably the best Riyadh season card there's been so far. I don't like all the hype where people say it's the greatest boxing card of all time. It's silly. It's unnecessary to go that far, but it would certainly be a very, very good card and the best we've seen for a very long time if all those fights are on it. But before we get to that, I want to shout everybody in the live chat. Hope you're feeling good today. Hope your days are going well or have gone well. And if I can kindly request that everybody stick a like on this stream, it really helps with visibility. It helps the channel. So if you could just take a split second to like the stream. We've got 95 concurrent viewers. We're over 100 concurrent viewers now. If we can get 50 likes, be very much appreciated. So shout out to everybody in the chat. Shout out to Matt for the super chat here. He says, I don't like this card because it's so over the top that it creates this scenario where the only place fights will happen is Saudi now. And that's an interesting take. And I've heard people make similar comments in the past that everybody will just wait for the Saudis to get involved before they take a serious fight. The problem is, Matt, is that I did a stream a couple of days ago talking about the things that have helped to kill American boxing in particular. And one of the main things is what I call diva culture, where these fighters act so entitled and they think they're worth 8-figure purses and all this kind of stuff. And unless they get those 8-figure purses, they're just going to fight nondescript, miscellaneous opponents. And they simply won't risk their O against the top level fighters. And so, unfortunately, this Saudi situation is not ideal. I completely understand your issues with it. But unfortunately, it's a situation where either the fights happen in Saudi or they don't happen at all. Because if the Saudis weren't involved, I don't think we'd be getting any of these fights or most of these fights, personally. But I understand your reservations. Shout out for another super chat. He says, the UFC does it in a way where they don't put too many good fights on one card because they know they will get pay-per-view sales with just enough. Again, I hear that, but with UFC, of course, it's one entity within MMA. And so they have, and even though it isn't the only entity within MMA, because they've got such a large share of the market in terms of viewership, they're able to market themselves as if they're the only entity that matters and, you know, call their championship the Undisputed, which is bizarre and ridiculous. But anyway, MMA is, of course, a much smaller sport than boxing in terms of participants. There are far fewer MMA fighters in the world than boxers. So it's more difficult to put boxing under a UFC style model and control it in that way. But I completely understand your reservations. As I say, it's a situation where either these big fights are happening in Saudi or they're probably not happening at all because of this diva culture that has emerged, particularly in the United States, where, you know, these fighters are trying to replicate what Floyd Mayweather did all those years ago. But of course, most of these guys are not as good as Floyd Mayweather. And so their version of the Mayweather method, as I call it, is it results in far fewer top fights because, of course, Mayweather was involved in big fights, good matchups along the way. He chose them carefully, of course, but they were still good fights nonetheless in terms of the quality of opponents. But because these fighters today, a lot of these American fighters are nowhere near as good as Mayweather, them attempting to use the same managerial methods that he used in terms of managing his career results in them fighting, you know, just look at Tank Davis, for example, nondescript opposition for most of his career. He's 30 years of age. And who has he fought? Well, Leo Santa Cruz, a small guy who was past it. Ryan Garcia, who was drained. I mean, Like, come on. This is the problem. If there was more, you know what? If American fight fans were harder on their fighters in terms of expecting them to fight the best, that would be a good start. But unfortunately, a lot of American fight fans are willing to pay to watch rubbish. It is what it is. How many people are going to be willing to watch and pay to watch Tank Davis in his upcoming fight? You know? The fact that Tank Davis can make millions fighting nondescript opposition is the problem. A shout out to Matt again for the super chat. He says, on the flip side, Saudi also gives an outlet to fights without that O and give them an excellent salary to fight. 1 or 2 losses is normal. Yeah, indeed, that is the flip side, is they don't throw you on the scrap heap just because you lose. Anyway, let's get on to that, and shout out again to Matt for the super chat. Let's get on to some of the things on the agenda today. So first of all, we're going to talk about this right here. You guys can see on screen. The IBF, the International Boxing Federation, have ordered Martin Bakole versus F.A. Ajagba as a final eliminator for Daniel Dubois' heavyweight title. It says the International Boxing Federation has ordered Martin Bakole to box F.A. Ajagba for the right to become the mandatory challenger for their heavyweight title. Top Rank has informed the IBF that Ajagba is available for the fight. Okay, so it appears as though Zhang didn't want to go ahead with it, just like Ajit Kabayel before him. If we take a look at the heavyweight rankings here, you'll see that F.A. Ajagba is ranked number 8 by the WBC, not ranked at all by the WBA. He's ranked number 7 by the IBF and number 10 by the WBO. And so what this means is, this is Ajagba's best opportunity right now. I don't see why he wouldn't be interested. So I'm not surprised that his promoter, Bob Arum, says that, you know, he'll take the fight or he's interested in the fight. Where else is he going to go? Ajagba has been fighting pretty much in obscurity. He has fought some decent fighters. He's fought some unbeaten guys and beat them, but not guys who are well known. So he's been fighting pretty much in obscurity ever since his loss to Frank Sanchez. And his career hasn't really seemed to have any kind of clear direction since that time. And so this represents the best opportunity for him that you can see on the horizon anytime in the near future. Obviously, it's a very tough fight. It's a fight which I would expect F.A. Ajagba to lose. I would expect Martin Bakole to stop Ajagba. But Ajagba is a very good puncher with the right hand. And we haven't seen Martin Bakole hit on the chin by a really good puncher yet. We've got no reason to believe that Bakole has chin issues. Yes, he did get stopped by Michael Hunter, but he took a lot of punches in that fight. He never actually went down. He was tired. He was injured by the end. I think Billy Nelson and Bakole are a bit, you know, playing fast and loose with the truth a little bit with regards to that injury, because I've watched that fight many times. And the injury is only apparent very late in the fight when the fight's already lost, basically. Anyway, point being, Bakole hasn't shown any serious vulnerability as far as punch resistance. I don't think he's ever been down as a pro. But if Ajagba caught him clean on the chin, we'd find out just how good those whiskers are. So that's looking like the fight right now. Martin Bakole versus F.A. Ajagba, IBF final eliminator. And the fact that Zhang pulled out, and given who he's rumored to be fighting, I think that my theory that I came up with, my hypothesis, that this is somehow a Frank Warren move to spite Ben Shalom. I'm even more confident now that my theory or my hypothesis is correct. I'm not certain, but I'm more confident that it's correct. That it's a Frank Warren move to spite Ben Shalom, to try and freeze him out and, you know, block what he's doing. Because, of course, Martin Bakole is a Ben Shalom fighter. Okay? So I think, in my opinion, Frank Warren has blocked the Martin Bakole Ajit Kabayel fight and the Zhang fight. That's my opinion. Okay. So if we have a look at Martin Bakole here, this is BoxRec page 21-1. He's listed at 32 years of age, still relatively young. He's obviously from Congo. And here we have Efe Ajagba. He's in his early 30s as well. Same height, according to the listing, 6'6". I suspect, I could be wrong here, but I suspect that Ajagba is actually a little taller than Bakole. If the fight goes ahead, I guess we'll find out when they're face to face. But I suspect Ajagba's a bit taller. I think Bakole might be a little shorter than the 6'6" that he's listed at. That's just my perspective. Anyway, let me know what you guys think about this fight in the comments. And again, I want to applaud the IBF for moving so quickly here, because with other sanctioning bodies, this could have dragged out for a year. I'll give you an example. You guys may remember that I think it was in early 2023 when the WBC, after God knows how long, finally ordered a final eliminator between Deontay Wilder and Andy Ruiz. In fact, I think they initially ordered it in late 2022. Yeah, but they didn't force the issue until sometime in the first quarter of 2023. And a deal didn't get done between the two sides, right? Normally, the sanctioning body, when they're ordering a final eliminator, they will give the two sides 1 month to negotiate. And if they can't come to a deal, they will order a purse bid at the end of that month. But a month came and went with Deontay Wilder and Andy Ruiz. No deal was reached, and there was no purse bid ordered. Absolutely ridiculous. In fact, there's still no mandatory challenger for the WBC, even now, in the back end of 2024. Okay, that's the kind of nonsense that you get with other sanctioning bodies, whereas here with the IBF, they ordered Martin Bakole versus Kabayel. They had their 30 days to negotiate. Kabayel pulled out before the purse bid took place. And I do want to reiterate what I've said in previous videos and live streams. This idea that Kabayel was justified in pulling out because Bakole was asking for too much money is absolute nonsense. People who buy that excuse obviously don't understand what a purse bid is or how it works. It doesn't matter how much Bakole was asking for because the fight was going to a purse bid. That means they're going to basically sell the fight on the open market. And the highest bidder essentially purchases the fight. And they will pay the fighters based upon what the bid is. Yeah? So if Bakole was pricing himself out, then the thing you should do in Ajit Kabayel's position is go ahead with a purse bid. Because if he then pulls out after the purse bid has been won, then you can unequivocally say, well, Bakole didn't want it. He was asking for too much money. During the 30-day negotiating period, yeah, people are going to negotiate. If you can't come to an agreement, you go to a purse bid, and then the percentages and the purses are set by whoever wins the bid. You see, so it makes no sense. This excuse that Kabayel's coming out with, oh, he was asking for too much money, it doesn't make any sense. Go to a purse bid then. He pulled out on the day of the purse bid. Like, you would at least go ahead with the purse bid and see who's willing to pay what. And let Bakole be the one who pulls out. Then your reputation is preserved. But Kabayel didn't do that. He was allegedly advised by Spencer Brown to pull out. And we'll come on to why I think he was given that advice later on. But yeah, so the IBF, after Kabayel pulled out, moved very quickly to order Bakole Zhang. Very quickly. I mean, within hours, if not days. After Zhang has pulled out, they've moved extremely quickly again to order Martin Bakole versus Efe Ajagba, the number 4 versus the number 7. And you see, this is why these promoters who are coming out here pushing this narrative that the IBF and their mandatory system is bad for boxing, even some of the boxing media are pushing this narrative. I push right back against it. It's not the IBF's fault when various contenders turn down final eliminators. It's not their fault. This is the fault of the fighters and the promoters. So personally, I think the IBF have the best mandatory system in boxing. It's not perfect, but again, if these guys are not willing to participate, then you're going to end up in some instances with relatively poor matchups as final eliminators and sometimes poor mandatory challengers. But blame the fighters, don't blame the system. So yeah, I want to applaud them for moving as quickly as they have, ordering Bivol versus Jagba. Presumably Frank Sanchez also turned it down because he's actually ranked a place above Jagba. I think he's coming off surgery or something, I've heard. So that is what that is. As I say, if the fight goes ahead, I would expect Martin Bivol to win. And yeah, that's my take on it. Give me your take in the comments, which I'll come on to shortly. Next bit of news here. Derek Chisora will not fight Jarrell Miller after all. Instead, Derek Chisora will fight Otto Wallin. Now, a lot of people are going to be disappointed by this fight. It isn't as sexy as Chisora versus Miller. The two big personalities, two come-forward pressure fighters who sling a lot of big shots and what have you. So people will be disappointed that it's Chisora against Wallin. It's a tricky fight for Chisora. If Wallin is on his game, he can move well. Southpaw, he's tough, he can take a shot. So it's definitely no easy task. This fight is going to be in Manchester. That was Chisora's wish, to have his penultimate fight in Manchester on February 8th. There you can see the bout listed on BoxRec. It's all official, signed and sealed. Now, the reason that the Miller fight isn't happening is because Miller is still having issues with his promoter, Dimitri Salita. Now, Miller was claiming ahead of his last fight against Andy Ruiz that was his last fight on, or his last fight with Salita, excuse me. His last fight on that Salita contract. But Salita is now disputing it. Okay, so that's the reason that Miller versus Chisora isn't happening. There's an article here on Boxing Scene, which I'm going to read from. It says, the long and tumultuous relationship between Jarrell Miller and promoter Dimitri Salita has bubbled up with another conflict, this time over a fight Big Baby was hoping to have with fellow heavyweight Derek Chisora in 2025. Just days ago, it was reported that Miller versus Chisora could take place on February 8th in Manchester. That's no longer the case. Miller posted on Instagram on Tuesday saying, the fight with Chisora is off. Chisora is a good dude. He wants to fight. I want to fight. The fight is off because of that little piece of S. Let me use my beep here. That little piece of Dimitri Salita, the dirtiest human being I've ever met in my entire life. And I've been around a lot of dirty mother. But Salita is the worst human being that's ever walked the planet. Him and his dirty lawyer, John Wirt, are compulsive liars. My contract is up with them, but he's exercising his first and last right of refusal and blatantly made up an entire story to try and get more money out of it. So we're basically talking about matching rights here. Miller said he also had to renegotiate fights on his own behalf, negotiate fights on his own behalf, and criticized Salita for using Miller's name to sign other fighters into his promotional company. Salita responded with a statement sent via text from his publicist. It read, I've promoted Jarrell Miller since the start of his career. Together we have achieved career high paydays for him, secured fights with him on every major broadcaster in the sport, HBO, Showtime, DAZN, and almost ESPN. We secured a would-be life-changing opportunity for him to face Anthony Joshua. Most recently, we were disappointed to learn that he turned down the fight with Derek Chisora. For him to imply that I am a liar and a cheat, among other things, is not only categorically false, it is also hurtful personally and professionally. As a former professional fighter, having been on his side of the business for many years of my career, I pride myself on making sure Salita Promotions always does the right thing by the fighter. That will not change. And the fact is that I have honored my agreement with Jarrell from day one through today. And he should do the same. Boxing Scene asked Salita about his promotion stance that Miller turned down the fight with Chisora, given that Miller said it was Salita's company that prevented it from happening. He said, I cannot go into the finer points of our agreement, but the fact is that Jarrell had the opportunity on 2 occasions in the past few days to say yes to the fight with Chisora, and he refused. Salita responded via a text from his publicist. He said, I fully supported the making of that matchup, and my whole team is disappointed that it was turned down. Miller has worked with Salita's promotional company now called Salita Promotions for a long time. According to BoxRec, their first fight together was in 2011 in Miller's second pro bout, back when Salita's company was known as Star of David Promotions. In 2014, Miller signed a contract with the company, entering a co-promotional agreement with Star of David and Greg Cohen Promotions. And by the way, Greg Cohen, Dimitri Salita's then business partner, I'm not sure if he still is now, he ended up going to prison, Greg Cohen, for some type of, was it fraud or something like that? Okay, don't quote me on that, but look it up. Greg Cohen went to prison on some stuff, and that was Dimitri Salita's business partner. So make of that what you will. Not that Jarrell Miller is the most trustworthy person in the world either. So I don't know, maybe they deserve each other. I don't know. I'm not saying that there's any impropriety on Salita's part. I'm just entertaining possibilities here based upon the allegations made by Jarrell Miller and the nature of the boxing industry. But I have no knowledge and no proof of any impropriety or any, dodgy activity by Dimitri Salita. Let me just make that clear. Anyway, it says here, the relationship had apparently soured by 2016. Miller asserted that he was a free agent. Salita countered that this was not true. Miller remained with Salita and Cohen and continued to work his way towards a title shot. And Miller landed one in 2019, signing to fight Anthony Joshua for 3 heavyweight titles, and then Miller tested positive for multiple banned substances and was pulled from the match. Instead, Andy Ruiz scored the payday, notching a stunning upset over Joshua and took home the belts. This wasn't Miller's first time running afoul of drug tests either. In fact, let me skip this part of the article because we all know about Miller's issues with failed tests in the past. So I'll move on to this part of it here. It says, the 3 promoters, this is from 2020. The 3 promoters, Miller and his new manager, James Prince, had finally agreed to all the terms and were due to sign the agreement. This was for the ESPN Top Rank deal. But after all the details had been ironed out, Salita went back to Top Rank chairman Bob Arum in an attempt to renegotiate elements of the agreement. Multiple sources with knowledge of the situation told ESPN. An irate Arum washed his hands of the deal, but cooler heads eventually prevailed and they signed the original agreement. Miller was so upset by the situation in Atlantic City that, according to sources, he had a physical altercation with Salita. Can you imagine that? Salita's about 5'6". I think he fought as a lightweight, was it? About 5'6". Jarrell Miller's like 6'4", over 300 pounds. Don't know what kind of altercation that was. Anyway, it says Miller was so upset by the situation in Atlantic City. According to sources, he had a physical altercation with Salita, who has promoted Miller since his early pro career. Okay, we know that. So anyway, long story short, without reading out this whole thing, I've probably read too much of it already. Jarrell Miller is still having issues with Salita. Salita presumably would have had a chunk of Jarrell Miller's purse had he gone ahead with the Chisora fight. Yeah, maybe he would have taken the majority of it because Miller lost a lawsuit to Dimitri Salita a while back, and he was ordered to pay several million Okay? Maybe he hasn't paid all of that yet. And maybe that's why he's not looking to go ahead with the fight if he has to pay his entire purse from it or a large chunk from it to Demetrius Alita. So maybe that's what the issue is. So he's decided to put his foot down, not go ahead with the fight because he's not happy about this Alita situation. It is what it is. So moving on anyway, from Chisora versus Wallin. Let me know what you guys think about the Chisora-Wallin fight, by the way. I think most of you will be kind of disappointed that it's not Jerome Miller, because that would have been a more fun matchup. Okay, so let's move on to this Saudi card, February 22nd. We're hearing all sorts of names are going to be on there, but these are just rumors at the moment. Nothing is confirmed. So let me just list off the fights again. Dubois versus Parker. Beterbiev versus Bivol. See, some people are skeptical that Beterbiev versus Bivol 2 would be on this card. But the first fight wasn't like terribly punishing for either man, was it? It was a nip and tuck affair. It wasn't any type of slugfest. And these guys are both pure athletes. They're clean livers. Remember, they, in the amateurs, were having countless fights a year. So this, for athletes of this level who are this disciplined, and the first fight wasn't that brutal for them, I don't think the turnaround is going to be that much of an issue. These are not guys who pile loads of weight on in between fights. They stay in shape. They stay in the gym. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if these guys actually like the quick turnaround. So I wouldn't at all be shocked to see Beterbiev Bivol on this card. And I think it's good that the rematch will be happening so soon after the first fight. Because who the hell wants to wait a year? Because that's what we were hearing from Bob Arum, remember, that we might have to wait a year to see the rematch. No. This rivalry needs to be sorted out once and for all here. The first fight was genuinely close. It could have genuinely gone either way. You couldn't have complained if it had gone to Bivol. So let's put it to bed. Let's get the rematch on as quickly as possible. I suspect it probably will happen on this date unless there's any injuries. So there's that fight there. As I said, we'll come back on to Dubois Parker. Boots Ennis versus Virgil Ortiz. Just going to show you guys the screenshot here. Official. Virgil Ortiz Jr., Jaron Ennis have reached verbal agreement on fight. Verbal agreement doesn't really mean much, particularly for a fight of this nature, but the interesting thing is, I saw an interview with Eddie Hearn the other day, and Eddie Hearn was saying that the offers they've received, or the discussions they've had at least, for Ennis Ortiz have been for a fight at 147. See, most people were assuming this fight would be at 154. But Hearn is saying that the offers and the talks have been for a fight at 147, so Ortiz will be moving back down. Now, this might sound counterintuitive to a lot of people, but I actually think that would benefit Ortiz more than Ennis, and I think that's why Ortiz's people want to do it. I think Ortiz's people, like myself, feel that Ennis is really struggling at 147, and that is the reason that his past few performances, not just the last performance, his past couple in my book, have been so lackluster. Obviously, Ennis has always had a leaky defense, but in terms of his energy levels and, you know, maintaining range and his movement and all that kind of stuff, it's suffering these days, I think, because he's absolutely dead at the weight. And I suspect that Ortiz's people feel the same, and they perhaps feel that Ortiz can make 147 better than Ennis can. So, interesting. If I had anything to do with Team Ennis, I'll be advising them to insist on taking the fight at 154. Forget about 147. Now, obviously, a benefit for Ortiz fighting, Jerome Ennis. In fact, it would work both ways. If Ennis moved up to 154 to fight Ortiz there, he would keep his welterweight belt unless he chose to vacate it. So win or lose, he would still be a world champion in another division. So maybe there's that play going on as well for both guys. But yeah, fantastic fight. Hopefully we do see it on this February card. There's apparently a verbal agreement in place. Another fight which is rumored to be on there, Shakur Stevenson versus Floyd Schofield. Very interesting fight. Schofield up and coming, young and talented. Carlos Adames versus Hamza Shiraz is rumored to be on this card. Now, I'll be honest, I haven't seen a lot of Carlos Adames. I've seen a little bit. I want to watch a lot more of him because I was watching Pro Box TV the other day, and Paulie Malignaggi and Chris Algieri were of the view that Adames is actually better than Aleem Kanuli, and that Shiraz is actually taking the more difficult fight. He's taking on the tougher champion in challenging Carlos Adames for the WBC middleweight title rather than Aleem Kanuli, who is unified champion, and certainly a more challenging fight than taking on the likes of Erislandy Lara. But yeah, what do you guys think about that? Do you think that Carlos Adames is better than Aleem Kanuli and he's more dangerous than Aleem Kanuli? I hadn't heard that take before, but maybe I haven't seen enough of Carlos Adames, so I definitely want to do some more due diligence on that. So that is rumored to be on there. Then there's the heavyweight fight I alluded to, which is rumored to be on this card. And this is why I suspect my hypothesis regarding the Martin Bakole situation with Kabayel pulling out and Zhang pulling out. I suspect that it is a Frank Warren move to spite Ben Shalom and try and freeze him out. The reason I say this is because it's rumored now that on this February 22nd card, Zheli Zhang will fight Ajit Kabayel. The two guys who pulled out of the Martin Bakole final eliminator will fight each other. How about that? Now, this is where I'm going to have to express my disappointment in the Saudis for not giving us Bakole versus Zhang and allowing, if what I'm saying is true, a promoter in Frank Warren, maybe assisted by Spencer Brown, to rob the boxing fans of a fight that we really wanted to see. Yeah, Bakole versus Zhang in particular. We really wanted to see that fight. I have to imagine that most people would much rather see that than Zhang versus Kabayel. But somehow the Saudis, well, presumably the Saudis were talked out of it by Frank Warren. And see, the Saudis were supposed to eliminate all of this silly politics in boxing where promoters are blocking this one and they're freezing this fighter out and all this carry on. Bakole fought on a Riyadh season card against Jared Anderson. So he should have favor with the Saudis at this point. He came in and he did his job. But somehow he's being frozen out. Not good. Not good at all. So Zheli Zhang versus Ajit Kabayel is still a good fight. But you wonder, what's the upside here for Kabayel? You know? What's the upside for him? Because last I checked, it wouldn't be a final eliminator. We can go back to the heavyweight rankings here. Just get them up for you. So you can see there, Zheli Zhang is number 4 with a WBC. Number 2, Kabayel is number 2 with a WBC. Zhang is number 4. With the WBA, I can't even see Zhang's name there at all. Kabayel's at number 5. Then you've got the IBF, where Zhang is ranked number 5. Kabayel number 3, but he's turned down, obviously, an IBF eliminator, so we know that's not happening. And then with the WBO, Zhang is number 2, and Kabayel is number 4. So the way things work out, where would the final eliminator for Adji Kabayel come from since he's turned down the IBF opportunity? I mean, this is boxing at the end of the day. It's so dodgy, it's so murky that one of these sanctioning bodies, of course, could just pluck an eliminator out of the hat at random and disregard their own rankings, because you're supposed to you're supposed to match two fighters who are next to each other in the rankings, the highest ranked available contenders. So, for example, the WBO, it will be Zhang versus Bivol because Tyson Fury is participating in a rematch of Usyk, so that rules him out. So it'll be Zhang versus Bivol if it was WBO. Final eliminator. That's what it should be. With the WBA, it would be Bivol, who's ranked number 1, against Michael Hunter, who's number 3 with the WBA. With the WBC, it will be, again, Kabayel Bivol. So is one of these sanctioning bodies going to skip over Bivol and make Kabayel Zhang as a final eliminator? Because that would be foul. I hope that if something like that happens, Martin Bivol explores whether he can actually sue the sanctioning body for skipping over him. Yeah, I hope he explores that possibility. Anyway, let me know what you guys think about all this in the comment section below. It seems as though Martin Bivol, because of his association with Ben Shalom, who's his promoter, is being frozen out here. And that's bad for boxing. Again, the Saudis should be solving this stuff. They shouldn't be allowing it to happen on their watch. Yeah? Never mind what Frank Warren wants. Make the Bivol Zhang fight. Prioritize Bivol. Look how highly ranked he is. Look how entertaining he is. You know, they're prioritizing people like Joseph Parker. Parker's a good fighter. He's had some good wins. But he's not entertaining, is he? If you want to put on cards to remember, put Martin Bivol in there against Zhang. Put Martin Bivol in there against Kabayel. He's value for money. He showed that against Jared Anderson on a Riyadh season show. So, yeah, I think the Saudis have really missed the trick there and allowed themselves to be bamboozled, possibly, by the likes of Frank Warren and Spencer Brown behind the scenes, who are not working, at least not in my view, in this instance, if what I'm saying is accurate, not working in the best interests of boxing. All right? And again, I've got no proof that Frank Warren or Spencer Brown are behind this. It's my suspicion based upon the way the situation appears to be playing out. And we know that there's no love lost between Frank Warren and Ben Shalom. So anyway, gonna get to your comments and questions now. Shout out to everybody in the live chat. Big up Black Dynamite for the super chat. He says, if they make Boots versus Ortiz at 147, then I suspect Team Ortiz may pull a Haney versus Garcia where Boots makes weight and Ortiz purposely misses weight. Okay, that's an interesting take. Hopefully that don't happen. But it is professional boxing and skullduggery is part of it, isn't it? It comes with a territory in professional boxing. It's a skullduggerous sport, unfortunately. So shout out to Black Dynamite for the super chat. Just scrolling up more here. Shout out to AO for the super chat as well. In fact, I might have to refresh my my page here. 1 second, people, because I'm not getting the option to pop out the super chat. Hang on. Refreshing my page. Okay, now it's giving me the option. Pop out chat so I can see these comments a bit better. Yeah, so shout out to oh, where's the other super chat gone? That's a live chat. Oh my gosh, now it's not even showing me the other super chat. Can't respond to the chat. It's disappeared off my screen. What is going on with YouTube today? I've put it back to the normal screen and yeah, I can't see anything. I can't see the other super chat. The person who sent the other super chat, please just type what you said in the chat now in caps so I can read it, because it has disappeared from my screen. I can't scroll up further than Mario Sanchez's comment where he says, wow, Miller having the audacity to call another human being dirty. I can't scroll up further than that. It literally won't go. It stops there. The person who sent me the super chat, I appreciate it, but it's literally disappeared off my screen. So if you could retype it in caps so I can read it out for you. Zero, dear. What is going on with YouTube today? The Joker says, honestly, this isn't that bad for Bicoli. Just ask the Chin FA and he'll get a title shot. Okay, they're saying from your screen it's disappeared as well. Maybe he's withdrawn the super chat. I don't know. But yeah, strange. Oh no, hang on. I see it here. I see it here now. I found it. I had to go to the fan funding thing. But yeah, shout out to Ayo. He says, big up Hatman. Thanks for all the excellent content over the years, my bro. And thank you, Ayo, for being so generous to donate via super chat. And I appreciate the support. Big up every time. Black Dynamite says Matt left 2 unread super chats. Okay, let me see if those are here as well. Let's have a look here. Yes, shout out to Matt again. So one super chat says, Top Rank hasn't been moving heavyweights properly in my opinion. They take too long to build up their fighters, and when they step up, they get stopped. Bicoli by KO. And you know, you make a good point there about Top Rank not moving their heavyweights well. Because you think about the heavyweights they've got right now. Jagba's been in the wilderness ever since he moved over from PBC. You've got Jalalov, who's still messing about with amateur boxing. You've got Richard Torres Jr., who, again, he's kind of coming up in obscurity. Although I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think he needs a lot of seasoning. Maybe he needs to be under the radar for a while. But certainly Jared Anderson, as many people have pointed out, he stepped up against Bicoli and he wasn't developed enough to win the fight. However, Bob Arum responded to that loss and he said that he didn't want Anderson to take the fight. He said that Turki Al-Sheikh negotiated directly with Anderson. So he kind of circumvented Bob Arum, negotiated with the fighter directly, and then Arum agreed to what, you know, Turki Al-Sheikh had offered. Because obviously he's getting his percentage. But he said that he didn't actually want that fight to take place. Make it out what you will. Is he BSing? Or is that the truth? So, but yeah, I definitely take on board your point that Top Rank don't seem to be building the profiles and they don't seem to be developing their heavyweights that well these days. I definitely take that point on board and I would tend to agree with you. And for F.A. Jagba, he knows what happened to his stablemate in Jared Anderson against Martin Bicoli. He knows. He would have seen that. But where else is he going to go? Other than fight Martin Bicoli. If he wins, there's a title shot for him. And by the way, I've been bigging up the IBF for how strict they are with their mandatory system. But at the end of the day, Daniel Dubois is their champion, their heavyweight. And because he is a name and he's going to draw, you know, big purses and be in big fights, it's possible that he and Frank Warren may have some influence over how quickly they force the Bivol mandatory onto him if Bivol gets past the Jagba. Because normally the IBF are very quick with them. In fact, I've heard some very disturbing comments recently from, I think it was Frank Warren, where he said that the AJ Dubois fight was a mandatory defense. Since when? Since when was that a mandatory defense? There was no talk anywhere that I'm aware of before the fight that AJ was mandatory challenger for Daniel Dubois. When did he become mandatory challenger? Who did he beat? What, Ngannou? That was not a final eliminator. The Wallin fight wasn't a final eliminator. How on earth was AJ mandatory challenger for Daniel Dubois? Can you see what's happening here? If they've somehow managed to convince the IBF to retrospectively recognize the Dubois-AJ fight as a mandatory defense, then that means they can push a Bivol fight back even further. Because with the IBF, mandatory defenses have to happen, I believe it's once every 9 months, which is more regularly than the other sanctioning bodies, right? So if they get to convince the IBF that the AJ fight was a mandatory defense, then they can push Bivol back 9 months. That is scandalous if that's actually what's happened. Scandalous. Yeah, and that to me, if that's the case, it would show that Frank Warren is really, really worried about Bivol fighting his boy, Dubois. Really worried. Maybe Billy Nelson wasn't exaggerating regarding, Dubois and his fear maybe, or at least his team's fear of Martin Bivol. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comment section below. But yeah, thank you to Matt once again for the super chats. A shout out to Ocean Blue. Thank you for the super chat as well. He says, what's up, Hatman? Bit late to the party, but what's good? Well, there should be a good card on February 22nd. A great card, an amazing card. Yeah. So never mind good, fantastic. If the rumored fights actually occur on that show, we shall see. But what's good with you, Ocean Blue? Always good to see you checking in. Okay, Muro's man says Bivol would absolutely destroy Dubois in my opinion. And maybe that's what Frank Warren's worried about. Waved says when he beat Wallin, that was a final eliminator. No, it wasn't. It wasn't a final eliminator. People need to understand the difference between a ranking match, a normal eliminator, and a final eliminator. AJ versus Wallin was never a final eliminator. It was a ranking match, I think, to decide the number 2, who was going to go in the number 2 spot. It was a normal eliminator, not a final eliminator. I remember it very clearly at the time. I talked about it, made videos about it. It was not a final eliminator. It was a ranking match for the number 2 position. Because I think the number 2 position was maybe vacant or something, or maybe Wallin had it. But anyway, they had a ranking match for a particular position in the IBF rankings. It was not a final eliminator. So if what Frank Warren is saying is true, he or Team Dubois, somebody there, has managed to retrospectively, or retroactively, should I say, turn Dubois AJ into a mandatory defense. That is a scandal. If that's what's happened, that is an absolute scandal to try and freeze out Ben Shalom and kick the can down the road with a Bivol fight. Shocking. I'm telling you, that's terrible. A shout out to Omo Jr. Big up, sir. Neil Hawkins says Bivol is overrated. If Anderson had some experience and wasn't so rash early on, he would have made Bivol gas. Well, I don't know whether Bivol is overrated. I think people overuse the word overrated because most fighters are overrated by someone. So I don't really see Bivol as overrated. I don't see him as the heir apparent for the heavyweight division or anything, but I think he's a dangerous fighter. He's an entertaining fighter. And I'd like to see him in the matchups against Zhang and certainly Daniel Dubois. Maybe even Filip Hrgović. There's so many matchups to put him in that will be very interesting and entertaining. That's what it's about. He's a dangerous heavyweight. So I don't really go for the whole overrated thing because, again, most fighters are overrated by someone. And the more popular the fighter is, the more people there are that overrate them. Rod Brown says, K. Solly says, Hatman, if Adalai loses to Dakers, do you reckon it's over for him? It's still relatively early on in his career. I don't reckon it'd be over for him necessarily, but he might have to rethink his career, his expectations of how far he thinks he's going to go, or make some type of dramatic switch up. I think Adalai is with Adam Booth now, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Is he not training with Adam Booth now? Charles B's in the chat. Big up Charles B every time. He says, I would hope the Saudis would apply some pressure on Warren to not pull his scummy tactics. Yeah, me too. The 286 project says, shameful if the IBF suddenly state that Joshua Dubois was a mandatory defense. Why would the IBF allow this when they've been strict with mandatories over the years? Well, because even though they are stricter than the other sanctioning bodies, Dubois is their champion. That equals money for them by way of sanctioning fees. And Warren isn't just Warren anymore, is he? Warren has now got the backing of the Saudis. So Warren is probably more powerful now than he's ever been in his whole career. And with the weight of all that, maybe even the IBF have succumbed to the pressure. Because, again, it isn't coming from the IBF. I've heard this from Frank Warren. He's the one saying it was a mandatory defense for Dubois. Since when? It was a voluntary defense. It was never a mandatory. But in order to push that Bivol fight as far back as he can, I mean, terrible. Okay, Black Dynamite with some details on Greg Cohen, Salita's business partner, and why he went to prison. It says here, Cohen had induced the victim to pay him $200,000 for a stock investment that was never made. He went to federal prison. Yep. That was Salita's business partner, Greg Cohen. Went to prison for, I guess, fraud or whatever. Very dodgy. Okay, person here says, Mr. Strikes Back, hello. Was just listening to you while I went on a refreshing walk in the cold. I think you're bang on as always. However, so long as they give us the fights we want, I'm cool. A shout out to you, sir. Enjoy your cold in the fresh winter weather. Rod Brown says, Warren is a disgraceful man if that's what he's doing to Bivol. Although the way I see it is, yeah, if that is what's happening, then it's what he's doing to protect Dubois, really. You know, he's not trying to inflict. I don't think there's any malice in his heart towards Bivol, but yeah. It's like collateral damage, isn't it? Trying to protect Dubois, and at the same time, I think trying to spite Ben Shalom, because he don't like Ben Shalom. Jackie Boy Johnson says there are rumors Bacoli or his team asked for too much. Yeah, I addressed this earlier on in the stream. That excuse makes no sense. It just makes no sense. There was a purse bid. Yeah, during negotiations, which is the month leading up to the purse bid, of course people are going to ask for all sorts of sums of money. If you can't come to an agreement, the purse bid is there to sort everything out. So all Kabayel had to do, if Bacoli was asking too much money, is let the purse bid happen. Then it would have been on the open market. Anybody would have been free to bid for it, and whoever won the bid would have decided what the purses would be. Never mind what Bacoli wanted, it would have been decided by whoever won the bid. Yeah? So that excuse from Kabayel was just absolute nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. Kabayel pulled out on the day of the bid. Why wouldn't you just go ahead with the bid? Whoever wins it, if Bacoli doesn't like that amount of money, let him pull out. And then everyone can accuse him of ducking. And then you can legitimately accuse him of wanting too much money. If he pulls out after the bid has been won, to pull out before the bid and then claim that Bacoli wanted too much money makes no sense. It's just a nonsensical excuse from Kabayel. It's just rubbish. So yeah, I think you know, Kabayel's obviously been, and you see, this is not to talk too much about Tyson Fury again, but this is the kind of rubbish that you'll hear from Team Fury, who of course Warren has been part of for so long, and Spencer Brown, who I believe is Fury's manager. During the past few years of Fury's BS, we've had all sorts of ridiculous excuses and things that don't make sense. And now we're hearing something ridiculous from Kabayel. Oh, he was asking for too much money. That's why I pulled out of the purse bid. It's like, what? What are you talking about? It's like let me try and frame the logic for you. Let's say you were, I don't know, this isn't an exact one-for-one comparison, but it's something similar. Let's say you were partaking in a local raffle, a local lottery, and the prize was like 200 grand. And you had your ticket, but at the last minute you said, nah, I'm going to rip my ticket up and not go ahead with the draw because I want more money than what they're offering. It's like, hang on, that's probably not a very good analogy. I'm trying to find a good way to, you know, something good to compare it to, but Kabayel should have just gone through with the purse bid. Simple. Why wouldn't you go through with the purse bid? Yeah, in a negotiation, both sides are going to ask for the earth, moon, and the stars. That the purse bid is there to sort everything out if you can't come to terms. It's like, honestly, one of the dumbest reasons and the most nonsensical excuses I've ever heard in my life for somebody pulling out of a purse bid is Kabayel claiming that Bacoli wanted too much money. Honestly, it's like the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. But that team over there, the Spencer Browns and all those lot, oh my gosh, they take the public for mugs with the rubbish that they have their fighters coming out with. Particularly Fury. They take the public for absolute mugs with an excuse that makes no sense. Yeah, gets me angry when I hear nonsense like that. Yeah, totally illogical. Rod Brown says, how would he know how much Bacoli asked for? Well, in negotiations, he would have been negotiating, his team would have been negotiating directly with Bacoli's team in the month leading up to the purse bid. So he would have known. But again, if you can't come to an agreement, you go to the purse bid. Whichever promoter wins the bid sets, the amount of money that they pay for the fight with the winning bid, that then sets what the fighters are going to get. Yeah, so let's say it's a 50-50 split. It may not have been exactly that, but let's say it's a 50-50 split. And the winning bid was $1 million. That would be 500 grand to each guy. All Kabayel had to do was wait till the end of that day, and he would have known what the winning bid was. Literally, all he had to do is wait less than 24 hours, and he would have found out what the winning bid was, and he would have found out whether Bicoli wants to take that money. That's all he had to do. But no, he pulled out before the bid even took place, and then said, oh, Bicoli was asking for too much. Like, people are going to ask for all sorts of stuff as, the way negotiations go. I go high, you go low. Yeah. That's normal in a negotiation in the run-up to a purse bid. See, if there was no purse bid, then Kabayel's excuse might have been, reasonable. But then again, maybe not, because we wouldn't be privy to what the money actually was, necessarily. But if there was no purse bid, then he could use that excuse and maybe get away with it. But there was a purse bid scheduled for that day that he pulled out. So his excuse doesn't work. Anyway, I'm laboring the point here. Yeah, as far as Parker Dubois, I'm expecting Dubois to win. I think Parker can hang in there for a bit. I think he's more durable mentally and physically than AJ, so I don't think it'll be over in 5 rounds. I could be wrong. I think Parker's got enough slickness about him. And, he's been in there with massive punches like Zhang. Obviously, Deontay Wilder, he knows how to look after himself. He's been in with AJ, of course, back in the days. Dylan White, another big puncher. So, yeah, I don't think it'll be a blowout for Dubois. Anything is possible, of course. I think Parker will give him some movement, throw a few fast shots back. He's still got those fast hands, Joseph Parker, faster hands than Dubois. But ultimately, I don't think he's going to have enough grit to tough it out against Dubois over the long haul enough to get a victory. I don't think so. Because whenever Joseph Parker in the past has been dragged into a dogfight, he's come off second best. If a boxing match breaks out, Parker's in with a chance. But I don't think, he's just like with AJ, I don't think Parker's going to be able to keep Dubois on the end of his punches. He's actually slightly shorter than Dubois, maybe an inch or so shorter. So I don't think he's going to be able to keep Dubois on the outside. Is he going to try different tactics? Is he going to come in heavy and try and bang it out with Dubois and hope to land a big shot? Apparently he's a lot heavier these days and he's working on his power and strength. I mean, he's got the hand speed and his chin's good enough to gamble in that way. But I don't know. I'd still favor Dubois. Yeah. In fact, maybe that's his best bet, Joseph Parker. Rather than trying to move around and wait for the inevitable, maybe his best bet is to go in there and try and have a firefight because he does have the faster hands and he's got a good enough chin. He's been stopped before, of course, by Joe Joyce. But he's got a good set of whiskers on him, Joseph Parker. He can take a shot. If he gets hurt, he goes down, gets up, as we saw against Zhang. So he's got a good enough chin, I think, to exchange with Dubois. But, as I say, I think he'll probably come off second best either way. Rod Brown says Dubois throws way more than Zhang. Indeed, he does. I would say Zhang hits harder than Dubois, though. Quite a bit harder, but yeah. Dubois certainly throws a lot more. He's a lot lighter on his feet, a lot faster on his feet. Okay, Vern says, Unc, quit playing and get you one of these DAZN deals. There are these people stealing your content and opinions and getting big bucks. I'm like, you can't do Hatman better than Hatman. You know what? I'm not too worried about all that. If indeed people are, you know, quote unquote, stealing my opinions. I mean, it's okay to have the same opinions that I have, and people can come to the same conclusions and have the same opinions independently of each other. I'm not saying that some of them don't get their opinions from me, but again, there are going to be other times when people say similar stuff to me that, you know, isn't based on anything I've said. They just come to the same conclusions independently. It happens. At the end of the day, it's only boxing. It's not like we're talking about, you know, rocket science here, where two people coming to the same conclusion would be less likely. Boxing is pretty straightforward, isn't it? And pretty simplistic. So there's only a finite amount of opinions you could have on a fight. So, you know, I'm not too worried about that. But shout out to Vern for the comment there. All right, we got President Bush here making a comeback. Shout out for the super chat. He says, have you heard of the whispers of apparent link between Kinahan, MTK, and Riyadh? Some very interesting coincidences with the inference being Turkey as a front. Yeah, this alleged link was reported on, I think, by Boxing Scene, or one of the boxing websites definitely did an article about it a while back. And the Saudis, of course, vehemently denied any link. Now, to me, it doesn't really make sense, because the Saudis, I mean, Turkey al-Sheikh is backed by the de facto ruler of the country, Mohammed bin Salman. And Mohammed bin Salman's power and money is beyond anything the Kinahans could even imagine. So why would Turkey al-Sheikh be a front for the Kinahans when his boss, MBS, is far more powerful than the Kinahans? Do you know what I mean? Like, why would that be the case? Could there be Kinahan involvement somehow, somewhere, you know, lower down the pecking order? I don't know. But yeah, when MBS is backing you, when he's got unlimited access to the Saudi coffers, then you don't need the Kinahans. You know? It's not like Turkey al-Sheikh is some regular promoter who's trying to drum up funding from somewhere. He's got an oil-rich nation, which is a absolute monarchy. They can do whatever they want with their money. There's no checks and balances, you know, or very little checks and balances in terms of what they do with the money. So why would he need the Kinahans? A shout out to President Bush. Never thought I'd ever say that in my life. Shout out to President Bush for the super chat. Black Dynamite says, Boxing Scene is owned by Gary Jonas, Pro Box owner. Indeed, he bought it from CBS, who previously owned it. It's safe to say their stories aren't exactly unbiased when it comes to the Saudis. Well, he's quite anti-Saudi now. He did an interview where he was going in on Turkey al-Sheikh and all that. So they're kind of anti-Saudi at Pro Box these days. Mighty Meatball says, I've been loving the Usyk and Cool Hand Partridge content lately, Hatman. Yes, Cool Hand Luke Partridge. We really need to get that hashtag going. For those of you who are on X, let's get that hashtag going. Luke Partridge. Whenever you tweet about Tyson Fury, hashtag Luke Partridge. You know, Fury likes trolling people, right? So surely he can be a good enough sport for us to troll him with the Luke Partridge hashtag. And some of Tyson Fury's trolling was actually funny back in the days. You know, when he got to calling AJ Flex, that was funny. In the run-up to the AJ Klitschko fight, he was calling AJ Flex and Klitschko Bitchko. He's referring to it as the fight between Flex and Bitchko. Obviously, he didn't come up with the name Flex. I think it was Kugan Cassius who originally came up with that name. And AJ didn't like it. He told him, don't call me that name again. So Kugan dropped it. But Tyson Fury revived it and was calling AJ Flex. And that actually was funny. It was funny. Yeah, K. Sully says all his Dossa sausage talk these days is dead. It is indeed dead. But back in the days, some of his banter and trolling was quite good, quite funny. But yeah, the new banter, the new hashtag has got to be Luke Partridge. I'm going to start hashtagging it on my videos. In fact, I'm going to do some thumbnails. Fury's face right there, but the name Luke Partridge. To see how many people are going to click on it, because they'll be confused, right? They'll look at the thumbnail like, okay, that's Fury, but why does the name say Luke Partridge? Shout out to Devin in the chat. He says, James Toney used to call David Gay and the Klitschko's the Bitchko. No, I used to call them the Bitchko sisters. Not the brothers, the Bitchko sisters. The Bitchko sisters. Shout out to Mohammed for the super chat. He says, Adames is fighting Shiraz on Feb 22nd. That's the rumor. Hasn't been confirmed yet, but yes, that's the talk. Who wins? Well, I would have gone for Shiraz, but after watching Paulie Malignaggi and Chris Algieri talk about the fight on ProBox TV, I now want to go and watch a bit more of Carlos Adames, because they're trying to say that Adames is actually better and more dangerous than Aleem Kanuli, which I certainly didn't have that perception up until that point. And maybe I won't after watching Adames a bit more, because I've only seen a little bit of him, truth be told, but I've seen, a couple of his fights. But they're saying, no, Adames is more dangerous than Aleem Kanuli. Okay, let me have a look at a few of his fights again, because Adames is coming up through the weights, right? Didn't he start out at welterweight or something? And he's moved up through the weights? He's more dangerous than Aleem Kanuli, is he? I don't know. Shout out to Matt for the super chat. He says something has changed with Fury after the comeback, not just in how he conducted himself, but at some level, he also seemed to get darker in character. I completely, 100% concur. I completely concur. Tyson Fury crossed over to the dark side. Either he crossed over to the dark side in terms of his character, or the dark side was always there and he just decided to reveal it, or inadvertently revealed it after the comeback. But yes, I completely agree with you. There was something kind of light and fun about Fury prior to his hiatus. But after the comeback, there's a darkness there in him. Yeah, I've mentioned this in a couple of videos over the past couple years. There's a darkness there. And in boxing, obviously darkness can help you, because at the end of the day, you're engaging in violence. But it isn't going to help you necessarily every time. When you come across one of these kind of archetypal Bruce Lee type warriors like Usyk, who's all philosophical and effervescent, who rises above darkness, and you meet somebody like that who's on their job, who's talented, who's got the pedigree and takes care of their body, you almost feel like the light is going to prevail over the dark, don't you? That's the feeling I had going into the Usyk Fury fight, the first fight. I just had this feeling that Fury was too much in the darkness to win the fight. He was concentrating on lying and, trying to bully Usyk and insulting him and all this type of stuff. And Usyk was just like armor plated against all of those psychic attacks, right? He rose above it. And as I said before, particularly when John Fury headbutted that member of Team Usyk and came off second best, it was like a portent of doom for Fury. Like, oh dear, your dad has gone in there with his dark energy and he's tried to bully up a little man and he's come off second best. That's like a bad omen for Team Fury, that your darkness that you're trying to push is not going to prevail in this situation. You're better off returning to the light. And that's, you know, I want to thank you again for the super chat and the comment, because now I can describe it better. Yeah. In order for Fury to beat Usyk or give himself the best chance, I think he needs to return to the light and get out of all this dark energy that he's in, the dark mentality and the lying and gaslighting and insults, attempts at bullying. I think he needs to get out of all that darkness and return to his former self, where he was more, you know, playful and a little bit more honest and stuff like that. Not completely. So yeah. How did I miss that one? Thank you, Alex. He says Luke has joined the dark side. Yeah, it wouldn't be the first Luke to join the dark side. So who's Darth Vader in this situation? Is John Fury Darth Vader? And who's Palpatine? Shout out to Alex for the super chat. Luke has joined the dark side. Shout out to President Bush again. He says, on the back of the Stan Dubois, Theron, Juju talk, have you ever witnessed anything in a fight, in or out of the ring, that you found difficult to explain? In a fight? No. No. I haven't witnessed it. Not that I can think of off the top of my head. I'm in my mid-40s, so I've witnessed a lot of things that I've no doubt forgotten about. But in a fight specifically, something I couldn't explain, something that was like, you know, Juju related maybe. Not personally, no. I've heard of things. I've heard of many things that people have told me, you know, particularly African people I've known who have claimed to have seen bizarre things in fights where individuals were apparently impervious to knives, you know, to blades, impervious to bullets, and all that. They claim to have witnessed it. But I've never seen anything like that personally. Again, shout out to, I'm calling him President Bush. I'm not reading his name properly. President Brush. Excuse me. That's me reading it as Bush. Blue Collar Sports TV, shout out to you. He says Mick Hennessy is Jabba the Hutt. Callum says Luke didn't join the dark side, Anakin did. Yeah, Anakin joined the dark side and became Darth Vader, but Luke nearly was enticed into joining the dark side by Vader, right? And by Palpatine. They tried to get him to join the dark side. Lex says Juju is real, Hat Man. Afro Jam says Juju just hit you, got you seeing stuff. All right, people carrying on the analogy, saying Fury fans are the stormtroopers. Anakin was always alive in that suit somewhere. Mm-hmm. Who would Yoda be? Who would Yoda be? That's a good question. I'm not even sure I can answer that one. Who would Yoda be? Because it appears right now, even though people saying Bob Arum is Yoda. Obviously, Tyson Fury and Usyk are not related, but in terms of the archetypes, Usyk would be Skywalker. Yeah? Never mind the family connection isn't there, and obviously Tyson Fury's younger than Usyk, but archetypally, if that's even a word, Usyk would be Skywalker, the guy who's come in to restore balance to the Force. And Tyson Fury would be Vader. If not Vader, then maybe Palpatine. In fact, I'm gonna say that Fury's more like Palpatine because he's manipulative. Vader isn't really manipulative, is he? Or not that manipulative. Whereas Palpatine is extremely manipulative, cunning. Mighty Meatball says Isaac Lowe Partridge. Isaac Lowe looks like an Amish person, doesn't he? Look at his picture on BoxRec. He looks like a member of the Amish community. And I always thought that, again, if you look at his BoxRec picture, Arslanbek Matmadob's BoxRec picture looks like a bigger version of Isaac Lowe. It looks like they're Amish brothers. The Amish brothers. Shout out to Charles B for the super chat. He says, keep up the good work, Hatman, both on the channel and Patreon. Much appreciated, Charles B, every time. Big up. Big respect. Callum says Hatman is Mace Windu. Well, I hope not. I hope I'm not Mace Windu because he gets blasted out of a window by Palpatine. Let me try something here. He gets blasted out of the window by Palpatine when Palpatine goes full on demon.
He's like, please don't kill me. I'm too weak. I'm too weak. Unlimited power.
Yeah. Yeah, Anakin comes in. Yeah, that's right. Anakin comes in, chops his hand off, and then Palpatine blasts him out of the window with the electricity. That's the only one of the prequels that was actually good. Blue Collar Sports TV says Isaac Lowe's IQ tweets. Isaac Lowe IQ's tweets are like trying to decipher the hieroglyphics. He's invented his own language. I can imagine. I haven't seen him myself, but I can well imagine. I mean, Billy Joe Saunders and Tyson Fury's English isn't much better. Particularly Billy Joe. Some of his English was shocking.
Good, Anakin, good. Henceforth, he shall be known as Darth Vader.
Shout out to President Brosh for the super chat. He says, Akoli versus White. Who would you have winning? Great stream, Hatman. Always keeping it realer than most. No bonnets round here. Damn straight no bonnets round here. Shout out to Brosh for the super chat. Akoli versus White. You know what? It's a really good fight, and I think that's why a lot of people want to see it. It might be one of the only fights that people actually are interested in Lawrence Akoli being in, right? Generally, people just don't want to see him in anything. But because of the rivalry they had in the past and the little face-off between Akoli and Baby Ting, you guys remember that? And they had their little face-off. Baby Ting coming in with the Suge Knight energy. Akoli looked a little shook, not gonna lie. Because of that rivalry back in the days and the sparring footage that came out where Akoli looked good against Dillian Whyte, it's an intriguing one. I think Akoli's definitely the fresher of the two. But he's also fragile, you know? I mean, Dillian Whyte is fragile, but Dillian Whyte has been in there against big, powerful heavyweights so he can tuck up and protect his chin and all that kind of thing. I might slightly favor Okolie at this stage of the game, just because he's a bit more fresh. And White has got those very, very slow feet. I mean, if he clips Okolie with the left hook, it's over. But then again, if Okolie hits White bang on the chin with a straight right hand, he might be over too. I think Okolie will probably do a lot of moving in that fight. And White maybe doesn't have the foot speed to keep up. So I'd lean towards Okolie slightly. But anything can happen. I think it's a good fight. I'd like to see it. Charles B says, Itama is the new Anakin with the high midichlorian count in his blood. Yeah, he might be. He might be. He certainly seems to be able to bend the force to his will right now. But he hasn't come up against, who can I think of? It's certainly not a Palpatine type figure yet. He hasn't come up against the Vader. He hasn't even come up against the Darth Maul. If Tyson Fury is Palpatine, then who's Darth Plagueis the Wise? Who's Darth Plagueis? I don't want to put it on him, but could Darth Plagueis be Peter Fury? Because he turned on Darth Plagueis, didn't he? Could Darth Plagueis be Peter Fury? The guy who kind of, helped Darth Vader, taught him a bunch of skills, and then Vader stabbed him in the back. Darth Plagueis the Wise. Alex says no, Plagueis is Klitschko. Someone says it's Frank Warren. Kay Sully says, remember John Partridge trying to size up Baby Ting at the weigh-in? Yeah, trying to size up Baby Ting at the weigh-in behind the safety of that barrier with lots of security around, of course. I think if the barrier's not there and it's just him and Baby Ting by themselves, he ain't sizing up to Baby Ting. Charles B says, Fat Mick is Plagueis. Who is Obi-Wan? Who is Obi-Wan? Peter could be Qui-Gon Jinn. Yeah, maybe, but then again, Qui-Gon Jinn trained Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? So we have to find out who Obi-Wan Kenobi is. Charles B says, I feel Wilder is General Grievous with his windmills. Who was Count Dooku? That's one of the ones I'm thinking of. Who's Count Dooku? He was played by Christopher Lee. It's a shame he didn't get more screen time, because Christopher Lee's always a good watch. That was the one where Palpatine started turning Anakin to the dark side. He got him to decapitate Christopher Lee. The one where he's like, what did he say? Kill him. Kill him now. Do it. God, that character was so hilarious. Palpatine, hilarious. Kill him now. Do it. Gareth A. Davis. Oh yeah, where does he fit into this story? Crimson says Gareth is Jar Jar Binks. A terribly annoying character. C3PO. Is there anyone camp enough in boxing to be C3PO? Don't know. Yes, the dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities that some would consider to be unnatural. Every time he talks, Palpatine in that film, Revenge of the Sith, it's a quotable. Like every single speech he gives is just hilarious. It's damn near the only thing they got right in the prequels was Palpatine and his dialogue. Indeed, Charles, he is the best character by a mile, by miles. Actually, an iconic villain. And that's the unusual thing. He was an iconic villain in a movie or a trilogy. I'm talking about the prequels now. He was obviously in the originals too, which were sequels to the later prequels. It's all very convoluted, but yeah. In that prequel trilogy, he was an iconic character in an unremarkable series of movies. I mean, a really poor series of movies, actually. The third film was the best, definitely. The previous two were pretty damn horrible. Oh, the Disney stuff is even worse. The Disney stuff is, I mean, don't even look at the Disney stuff. Charles B says, I actually rooted for the Empire. CPB1 says, Chris Eubank would be C3PO. Okay, I can see where you're going with that. In fact, I'm glad you reminded me. Everybody needs to check out Chris Eubank's YouTube channel that he just launched a month ago. This is an absolute gem of a channel. Yes, it's Chris Eubank Sr. Answering questions and what have you from the public. Bizarre, as you would expect a Chris Eubank endeavor to be. Very strange, eccentric, but highly entertaining. Some of the questions also, I have to big up the people that sent him in questions, because they were obviously sending in questions to try and troll him. And it was, yeah, absolute gold. I haven't seen his latest episode, but I saw the one before with a thumbnail that says, "Are you completely mad?" That was jokes. And right after this stream, I'm going to go watch the next one. My biggest regret. Yeah. You will not be disappointed if you go watch this guy's channel. Absolute gold. Mura's man says, already subscribed, hilarious. Trust me. Yeah, the FIFA thing. That man really is a space cadet, isn't he? He's so out there, it's unreal. He is a legend, you know, for that reason, because he's so far out there. He's like a caricature of a caricature at this stage. He's far more eccentric now than he was even when he was fighting. And when he was fighting, he was eccentric. But since retirement, the eccentricity has gone to a whole new level with this guy.
I can feel your anger. Makes you stronger.
Yeah. Yeah, would you like a sweetie? It's a stupendous confectionery. Yeah, Kylie says Eubank is the gift that keeps on giving. That's a whole fact. Chainsaw says, I always thought it was an act with him, but it clearly wasn't. Well, it is an act, but it's like an actor who immerses himself in a character that he's going to play. At some point, he becomes so immersed that he becomes the character. And I think that's what happened with Eubank Sr. He's become the character that he's immersed himself in for all these years. This kind of English eccentric aristocrat archetype. And now it's become him. The character has taken over his original personality. He's fully immersed himself in it. Method acting gone wrong. Exactly, Kylie. Man has gone fully into the character to the point where there's no coming back out now. There's no coming back out of the character. He's channeled some type of 19th century British tough or something, hasn't he? I don't know which one exactly, but he's managed to channel one of them and they've come back and taken over his body in spirit. All right, peeps, I'm going to bring this stream to an end here. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining me on this one. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Be good. Take care. And a special shout out to anybody who donated via Super Chat. Much appreciated as always. And I'll catch you on the next one. It won't be long. Peace.